Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the 2018 National Aeromodeling Championships. I'm here this afternoon. It's a gorgeous afternoon in Muncie, Indiana at the International Aeromodeling Center, and I'm here with someone from the National Free Flight Society to talk about the outdoor free flight nats. Why don't you introduce yourself?
Hi, my name is John Lorbiecki, and I am the president of NIFAS.
So, tell us a little bit about free flight. For anybody that hasn't been here at the International Air Modeling Center during the free flight nats, the event really can take over the entire 1,100-acre site. Tell us a little bit about some of the things that folks are seeing on our video feed right now.
Well, what you're looking at, as you said, free flighters tend to go to where the wind is. We are very controlled by the wind. For those of you not familiar with free flight is the very first sport in model aviation, because back in the 1900s, of course, there was not radio control, there was not U control, and so everybody wanted to fly free as a bird. And so free flight means just that. Once you release the model, you have absolutely no control over where it goes. Typically, there's three main classes. One of them is rubber powered, so they use various lengths and weights of rubber band. There's a glider event, and this glider event goes everything from where you launch the glider with your hand to where you tow them up with a 50-meter line, which happens to be standard, and then you glide. And then there's engine powered. And the engine powered goes everywhere from 0.02 cubic inches all the way up to 0.65 cubic inches. And with free flight, we typically go by what's called a maximum flight, because the duration of these models can be, if you pick the proper air conditions, you can actually be in the air for hours. So what we do is that we say that you will, let's say for a particular event, engine-powered event, like the model that we have on the ground, you'll get a 7-second engine run and you're trying to get 2 minutes. So you go in and you run the engine for 7 seconds, no longer. At 2 minutes, and these are timed by people on the ground, you now have your max or maximum flight. So that 2 minutes is recorded. Then you attempt to get 3 of these flights, and after that point, if you are perfect, then we will reduce the engine run and possibly increase the maximum time, and you keep doing that until you either drop a flight or you've got more time than your fellow competitor. So that's the basis of free flight. And each rubber, like the rubber events, those you'll use maybe 10 grams of rubber band with a model that's no bigger than 30 inches, either in length or width. There's international events, and the international events are run by the FAI, which is also the same organization that does full-size aviation records. And there, typically we will have a team selection, and it just so happens that my son and I have been on 3 teams. We've been in Slovakia, the Ukraine, and France. Wow. And my son was a world champ in France with a powered model airplane, and there was 20 countries competing for that. So you can go everywhere from a local competition to the nationals, which you're seeing now, and to international competition. So the nationals is a 5-day event. We fly different events each day, and it's a variation of things from rubber powered to all of the events added together, but this is the national event. At this particular contest, we've had people from Canada. I think we had somebody from England, and then of course throughout the United States. And typically it's the best of the best, and everybody in between. What makes free flight really interesting is that everybody can have their day. You can take the best person with the best airplane, and I've done this, where you have an airplane capable of doing 7 minutes and it lands in a minute and a half. And that sort of shows how poor the pilot can be at times.
Well, speaking of the aircraft, so folks that have been following us throughout the summer here at the Nats, just earlier this week saw some coverage of soaring. And so To the untrained eye, you might look at an aircraft like this and think, boy, it kind of resembles a soaring airplane in a lot of ways, but there are some things that look decidedly different about it. What makes a model like this, the one that we have behind us here, what makes this unique, and how is this built in such a way that it can have a long flight and still a controlled flight path, even though that there's no one that's in control of it?
Well, if sailplanes, you got to remember, copied us.
Okay, sure.
So, it was free flight first and then sailplanes, because it was one of these things where they go, I'm too old to chase. So how about if I put a radio in it, but I still like soaring?
Yeah.
And so with the free flight model, now you got to chase it. Mm-hmm. But what we do, for instance, with the model that we're looking at on the ground, this one is engine powered. So shall we pick it up?
Yeah, absolutely. Give us a tour here.
So what we're looking at, in models like this, we typically describe them as gas models. And then there's half A, B, and C, and D gas. And what those letters relate to is the size of the engine. And so the engine in this one is a Nelson, and it probably produces well over 1 horsepower. And they'll run in the 18 to 20,000 RPM, depending on the propellers and on the motor. All of the functions of the model, which on this model are very simplistic. Mm-hmm. We fill the engine with fuel right here.
Okay.
And then this line is attached to this timer. All of the mechanisms are run off of a clockwork timer. So that timer, you would set like this. We'd have all the arms set in the proper location. You start the engine, you move this down like this, and you let go of that button when you launch it. The timer then rotates, this arm lifts up, and this pinches the fuel line, which stops the engine. So now the model transitions into a glide. As it's gliding around, one of the things, like I said earlier, is that we have a 2-minute or 3-minute maximum time. After that, you want to get the model down as quickly as you can. So what we do there is that we've developed many years ago the dethermalizer. And so what that will do, so you notice the tail goes up in the air that far. Uh-huh. The model will glide, it'll give a little dip, and then it will descend like this, and very controllable. Now, if you look at this, and if you're into space things at all, Rutan's Spaceship One, if you remember how it came down, it rotated the wing. That all came from the dethermalizer because Burt Rutan used to fly free flight models. And he thought about it, and it's like, it's a perfect way to bring the airplane down.
It's such a as I look at this, it's such a wonderful piece of engineering because it's totally self-contained and complex, but relatively simple in the principles. And it's a great example of how advancements in technology or developments in technology and modeling have gone on now to affect full-scale aviation and be used on one of the most modern aircraft that exists today.
Correct. And you look at the model and you go, oh, this is very simple. But there are things on every control surface that matter. If we just go in the back, you'll notice there's clay and weight. What that's used for is controlling the glide. So he's actually moving the center of gravity back to bring the nose of the airplane up to slow down the glide. These little pieces of wood back here that look like they're just sort of hacked on, this is actually a rudder tab, and that's to control the model both in glide and climb. Then, and this is a little harder to see, but this wing, this trailing edge is actually lower than this leading edge. So here, if this was flat, this is actually bent down. And once again, this isn't just a mistake. This is actually used to help trim the model when it's climbing so it doesn't dip that wing. Then, if we go even further, where it looks like the engine is crooked, that's what we call side thrust. And so that's used to control the model in climb to keep the model, believe it or not, if this was straight, the model would turn too much to the right. And then, it's hard to see, but sometimes we actually bend the engine down slightly and then use that as down thrust. And that also is used during the power portion of the climb. So with a very simplistic looking model, there's a bunch of little adjustments that the flyer will make to make the model perform how he wants it to be. And you said, what's the difference between this and soaring? We have to do all of this either with the way that the wing was built or the fuselage was built, or with things that we add. They just use a little trim tab.
Well, that is a pretty remarkable difference, and it's just incredible to see all those small details. And I suppose I'm going to go out on a limb here and say that it's those details and that engineering that makes free flight so attractive to the huge group of people that are out here this week.
Oh, it definitely is. What's really intriguing is, as the president of the National Free Flight Society, I've gotten to know a lot of our members, and we have everything from carpenters who tend to be craftsmen, all the way up through, we do have actual rocket scientists that do fly with us.
Do you have to be a rocket scientist to do this?
You definitely do not. And you can, I think what's really nice about free flight is that for $2, you can have a model that will fly, and you could almost be competitive in a couple of classes here on this field at a national event with a $2 to $5 airplane. Or you can go all the way to the extreme, which I sort of have in a few instances, where you can actually have a model that's all built in carbon fiber, where the engines run 30,000 plus RPM, where we change the camber of the wing between the power phase and the glide, or we fold the wingtip down, and then you only have a span that's this big, and at the top we release those, and all of a sudden you have a 104-inch wingspan. And then we move the tail, we move the rudder, and so you can have all of the extremes. And you can give a child a hand launch glider, and they can go out there and have a blast. And once you pick your first thermal, which is hot rising air, and you lose that first model, you're almost hooked. And we've all lost models. I've got one in Muncie that I left last year, and I have no idea where it is.
Well, I can't thank you enough for taking some time with us today to introduce free flight to our audience. It is just amazing the amount of thought and engineering that goes into, to your point, what looks like a simple aircraft, and really at the end of the day is anything but. For somebody that might be watching this and thinks, you know what, free flight looks like a lot of fun to me. It seems like something I'd be interested in, and hey, I just heard that I can get into this pretty cheap, so I want to give it a shot. How does somebody get started? Where can they go to find more information?
Well, this sounds like every TV ad. Go to www.freeflight.org. So the National Free Flight Society does have a website, and for I think it's $29 a year you can join. We've got 6 50-page issues a year of what we call the digest. And there's thousands of ads or thousands of articles that are available on free flight, and everything. Something we didn't cover was scale models, and a lot of there's also a scale event here by the FAC, which is, and I can't remember what it stands for.
The Flying Aces.
Flying Aces.
Yeah, and
Flying Aces Club.
so our viewers might. We actually talked with them a little bit earlier this year,
Good.
and so yeah, folks can go back and look for that video if you're interested in learning more about them.
Right, and there is another class where you can build a model of your favorite airplane for $5, $10, and go out and enjoy flying your. You can be a P-51 Mustang flyer, and you don't have to have a real live airplane.
Well, thanks so much. It sounds like the National Free Flight Society makes a ton of great resources available for folks that are interested in getting started. I can tell you from being out here this week, you're not going to find a better group of people to learn from than the folks that are here representing the National Free Flight Society and AMA Free Flight enthusiasts. So thanks so much for taking some time with us. I'm sure you've got a busy schedule as you guys get the competition wrapped up and everybody makes their safe trips home. So
Okay.
Thanks again.
Well, thanks for having us.
So, for everyone that has been watching over the last few weeks and is interested in the Nats, we really, really hope that we'll see you here at the International Aeromodeling Center for the 2019 National Aeromodeling Championships. In the meantime, if you want to learn more about what happened on site this week with Free Flight, make sure you head to nats.modelaircraft.org/nats-news. There you can find our daily coverage of all of the activity that happens here at the National Aeromodeling Championships. We are going to see you next week as we take a look at the RC helicopter Nats. But until then, head over to nats.modelaircraft.org and stay tuned. We will see you in just a few days.